I arrived at the cottage just after noon. The last stretch of road was a narrow ribbon of cracked asphalt winding through Wyoming pines, quiet and honest in a way city streets never were. I parked beside the porch and rested my hands on the steering wheel for a moment. I was 67 years old, newly retired from 4 decades of forensic bookkeeping, and this little cabin was the first thing I had bought solely for myself. Not for a husband, not for a job, not for a family obligation, just for me. My doctor had told me the same thing my bones had whispered for years. Ruth, if you don't slow down, your body will choose for you. So I did something that scared everyone except me. I sold the condo in Denver, closed my consultancy, and bought a cabin in the woods where no one needed spreadsheets, cleanup audits, or the woman who always fixed other people's disasters. I stepped out of the truck. The air smelled like pine sap and cold earth. The wind brushed my sleeve with a tender patience only wilderness understood. Inside the cabin, everything was simple. A single bedroom, a kitchen that didn't pretend to be anything fancy, wooden walls that held decades of quiet. I unpacked slowly, each object placed with intention. Then I made coffee the old-fashioned way, boiling water on the small gas stove. Retirement hadn't erased the habit of early mornings, but it did soften them. As the smell of coffee filled the cabin, I finally felt something loosen inside my chest. My daughter Lily had cried the day I told her I was moving to Wyoming. Not angry tears, just scared ones. She lived 2 states away in Utah teaching at a small community college. She kept saying, "Mom, it's too remote. What if something happens?" But she also knew why I needed this. She had watched me bury her father. She had watched me work through grief by drowning myself in other people's numbers. She knew I needed space more than company. Damon, her husband, however, he had opinions, too many. He'd always bristled at me, my background, my career, my way of calling out inconsistencies in his stories. He said I analyzed too much. In reality, I saw too much. Damon liked control, especially over Lily's salary, Lily's schedule, Lily's life, and he hated that she trusted me more. 3 years ago, he exploded during dinner because I asked an innocent question about their joint account. Since then, he avoided me, but not quietly. He told Lily I was interfering and rigid. I let it slide. She was happy enough, or so I thought. I carried my coffee to the porch. The rocking chair creaked beneath me. Wind moved through the treetops like distant waves. I wrapped both hands around the mug and let my body settle. Peace. Finally. And then the phone rang. The sound cut through the trees like a blade. I looked at the screen. Damon. My jaw tightened. He never called me. Not directly. I answered anyway. "Ruth," he said, skipping any greeting, "we need to talk. What's going on? My mother is moving in with you." The wind outside seemed to stop. With me, I repeated, "She needs space. Somewhere quiet. That cabin of yours is perfect. If you don't like it, come back to the city." He said it as if he owned the deed, as if my life were another slot on his crowded calendar. And suddenly, the pattern was clear. He wasn't calling to ask. He was calling to announce. "It's not a request," he added. "Mom comes up next week." Lily agrees. My heart stuttered. Lily agreeing to this. Then I understood. She must not know the full story. She was empathetic to a fault. Damon knew that. He twisted it when needed. "Does Lily know you're calling me like this?" I asked. A pause. A dangerous telling pause. "She knows my parents need help," he replied. "You're retired. You have time." There it was, the disrespect, the assumption that my age made me available. That my solitude made me helpless. That retirement meant I owed him something. The same arrogance I had seen buried beneath his polite smile for years. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice to stay calm. He interpreted the silence as submission. "Good," he said. "I'll text the details." And he hung up. I sat very still. The wind returned colder this time. My coffee had gone lukewarm. The wilderness around me felt different. Not hostile. Alert. Watching. This place was supposed to be the beginning of peace. Yet here I was listening to Damon assign my cabin the way people assign a spare closet. But something inside me, something I had tucked away since retirement, clicked back into place. I stood, walked into the bedroom, and opened the bottom drawer of my suitcase. Beneath folded sweaters was a familiar weight, my old forensic notebook. Brown leather cover, worn corners, pages once filled with numbers, timelines, and patterns that saved companies from collapse. I laid it on the kitchen table, opened to the first blank page, picked up a pen. Date, time, Damon Harrison. Statement, my mother is moving in with you. I underlined the sentence once, clean, sharp, deliberate. Then I wrote the second part, not a request. The wind pressed against the windows. A branch tapped once, twice like a warning. I clicked the pen closed and whispered to the silence, you should never mistake quiet for weakness. And the reckoning began. I woke before sunrise. The woods hold a different kind of silence at dawn, one that sits low on the skin and reminds you that the world is bigger than your worries. I pulled on my coat and stepped onto the porch. The boards complained under my feet, a gentle reminder that this place had lived long before me. I started my morning inspection. It was an old habit I had carried from years of forensic work. You check things because unchecked things break. I walked the property line with my hands tucked in my pockets. Pine needles brushed my boots. A rabbit darted under a fallen log. Nothing dramatic, just the truth of land that had no reason to pretend. The cottage needed small repairs. The back door stuck at the hinge. The front window frame sagged because of years of wind and Wyoming winters. I made a list on the inside cover of my notebook. Door hinge, loose siding, water pressure, electrical box hum. I worked slowly. There was comfort in the ordinary, tightening screws, testing faucets, sweeping the porch. The grounding came from the rhythm. After the phone call from Damon, my nerves had jumped like live wires. This work steadied them. Simple tasks make grief and anger quieter. I was on my knees checking the outdoor water valve when I heard gravel shifting. A truck rolled in, old enough to have character, but not old enough to complain. The driver waved before stepping out. "Morning," he said. "I'm Hank. I live 3 cabins down." He had a face tanned by sun, and Winters, a man who knew tools better than paperwork. I stood and brushed dirt off my jeans. "Ruth," I said, "just moved in." He nodded like he had already guessed. "Cabin needs love, but she's a good one. Want help with that valve?" Help from strangers used to make me wary in the city. Out here, it felt different, honest, needed. "Sure," I said. Hank crouched beside the pipe. Winter hit this line hard. "See the crack? Happens all the time out here." He tightened a joint with steady hands. While he worked, he talked not in a chatty way, but in the way of people who live where silence is normal. "This land keeps stories," he said. "Some folks respect that, some don't." He told me about a couple who tried to claim an empty cabin last winter. They figured the owner was too old to fight back. They were wrong. The county sheriff had them out in an hour, and the whole valley talked about it for weeks. I listened. Every word felt like a warning, shaped like a neighborly story. Hank pointed at the tree line. "You should know. We get coyotes, black bears, and sometimes people who don't mind taking what isn't theirs." I nodded. "Good to know." He glanced at me with a smirk. "Also Ruth in these woods, the person who talks louder is usually the one losing. Silence wins first." I laughed. "That sounds like life in general." "It is," he said. "But the woods make it obvious. He refused money when he finished fixing the valve. Neighbors help neighbors," he said. "You'll do the same for someone one day." Then he climbed back into his truck and disappeared between the pines. The day moved quietly after that. I cleaned the kitchen. I reorganized the pantry. I tested the smoke alarms. The grounding still worked. Every task softened the echo of Damon's voice in my head. My daughter's name stayed in my chest like a question I did not want to open yet. By sunset, the sky burned orange behind the tree line. I made tea and sat by the window. The cottage looked smaller in the fading light, but not fragile. more like a creature settling into sleep. I checked the security feed on my phone out of habit. The real estate listing had come with a basic camera system. Nothing fancy, just enough to watch the front path and the porch. I had not expected anything unusual, but there it was. A shadow moved past the porch railing, slow, deliberate. The figure paused at the edge of the frame, too far for the face to register, but close enough for me to feel the intent. A second figure joined the first. My tea cooled in my hands. Then the taller figure lifted a phone. The flash of the screen lit the jawline for half a second. Sharp. Familiar in the worst way. Damon. The second figure was smaller and stooped. Meredith. His mother. They stood there surveying the porch like buyers checking a property they already believed belonged to them. Heat spread through my ribs. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Something that came from decades of reading people who thought rules bent for them. They stepped off the porch and walked toward the side of the house just outside the camera's view. I waited. No one returned into the frame. They must have circled the house, testing windows, checking entrances, checking my home. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Every quiet part of me shifted. I was not a threat, but I was not weak. The woods do not lie. They had already warned me, and now that warning had a face. I closed the security app, took a long breath, opened my notebook. New entry, uninvited visitors at 20:30, Damon Harrison and Meredith, intent unknown. I set the pen down. The cabin creaked as the temperature dropped. The woods pressed in close, waiting. Whatever reckoning was coming had already begun. I slept lightly after seeing Damon and Meredith on my porch. My mind stayed alert even in the dark. When morning came, I made coffee and reviewed my notes. Their visit was not an accident. People do not circle a house at night without purpose. I kept my routine steady. I swept the porch. I watered the small rosemary pot near the steps. The woods felt steady again, but I knew the peace was temporary. At noon, my phone buzzed. Naomi's name appeared on the screen. My chest tightened. "Mom," she said, "can you come for dinner tonight? Damon wants to talk. I want you here." Her voice carried pressure she tried to hide. "Of course," I said. "What time?" 6, she whispered. "And Mom, please be patient." I knew what she meant. I also knew patience had limits. The drive to town was quiet. The sky hung low with pale winter light. Naomi's house sat neat on a small street, a place built for normal families. I parked and paused with my hands on the steering wheel. My instinct warned me the dinner would not be simple. I stepped out anyway. Naomi opened the door before I reached the porch. She hugged me fast, almost urgent. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Always," I answered. Inside the house smelled of roasted chicken and rosemary, but the air felt off, too tidy, too arranged. Damon stood near the kitchen island with a smile shaped like control. Meredith sat at the dining table, already her posture tall and deliberate. "Ruth," she said, "so glad you could make time. Living alone must leave your schedule open." Her tone was sweet and sharp at once. I gave a small nod. "Good to see you too." The four of us sat. Naomi served dinner with careful hands. Damon placed a second basket of bread on the table. "We wanted a quiet night," he said, "a chance to discuss family matters." He stressed the last phrase like it was a verdict. I focused on my plate. The chicken tasted fine. The air tasted wrong. Meredith tapped her fork against her plate. "Ruth, dear, women your age often forget small things. It is natural." That is why family living together is so important. She smiled directly at me. Living alone in the woods can be dangerous, confusing even. Naomi's eyes flicked toward me with worry. I reached for my water calmly. "I still manage," I said. "Oh, I am sure you try," Meredith replied, "but trying is not the same as safe." Damon cut in. "We just want to help you transition. A house in the woods is not ideal for someone retired. You could stay here, or my mother could join you. Either way is workable." I swallowed a small bite slowly. "I see." But while they spoke, something else caught my attention. A stack of papers sat half-tucked under a magazine on the sideboard. The corner of a credit statement peeked out. The color was unmistakable. I had seen the same design the night before in Naomi's dining room. When Naomi rose to refill water, I stood. "I will grab napkins," I said. I walked toward the sideboard. The papers were placed too neatly. People who are not hiding things do not arrange documents with military precision. My eyes scanned the top line of the visible envelope, Cody Federal Credit Union. The next line read, "Payment overdue notice." My pulse stayed steady, but my mind sharpened. Damon spoke loudly behind me. "Find everything you need, Ruth." He sounded casual but strained. He knew how close I was to the truth. I returned to the table. Naomi set down the water pitcher with trembling hands. "Mom, the roasted vegetables are your favorite?" she said softly. Her eyes told a second story, one she could not voice. Meredith leaned forward. "Naomi worries too much. She's like her father, sensitive. That is why Damon handles the important documents." She gave a pointed nod toward the sideboard. "Bills can overwhelm her." I understood the unspoken message. They wanted Naomi kept away from something, and that something sat 10 feet from us under a magazine. I cut a piece of bread. "Everyone manages stress differently," I said. "Yes," Meredith replied, "especially when financial strain appears." Damon shot her a warning glance. Too late. My mind clicked. Financial strain. I looked at Naomi. She stared at her plate. Dinner continued with forced chatter. Damon talked about work. Meredith complained about rising utility costs. Naomi said almost nothing. The silence around her looked heavy. After dessert, Damon cleared his throat. "Ruth, we think it is best if you consider moving in with us after winter. Living alone so far out is not wise." His tone carried no warmth, only decision. "I will think about it," I said. And I would, but not in the way he expected. When the dinner ended, Naomi walked me out. The moment the door closed behind us, her shoulders sagged. "Mom, I am sorry. This was his idea." "I know," I said. "He said he wants everyone to be on the same page. He said your health is important, but he has been getting more controlling." "He hides things. He checks my mail before I see it. He says it is for efficiency." Her voice dropped. "And he said you cannot afford that cabin on your own, that you need supervision. He says it is for your safety." I placed my hand on her arm. "Naomi, has he shown you the bills?" She shook her head. "He says the paperwork stresses me out. He handles everything." A cold anger settled in my stomach. "Naomi, listen to me. You are not the problem." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Mom, I do not know what to do." "Do nothing for now," I said gently. "Let me handle this." Before she could answer, her porch light flickered. The woods behind the house felt colder. Damon watched us through the window, his silhouette stiff as stone. "Go inside," I told her. "Rest." She nodded and slipped back in. I sat in my car for a long moment. The envelope image replayed in my mind. Payment overdue. Hidden. Positioned with care. Combined with their visit to my cabin, the pattern was clear. Damon was preparing something, and he was using Naomi to shield it. I opened my notebook under the dim streetlight. New entry. Damon appears in financial distress. Evidence hidden from Naomi. Further confirmation needed. I closed the notebook. The dinner had not tasted right, but the truth was starting to sharpen. The morning after the dinner, I woke with a weight sitting on my chest. Not fear, not anger, something quieter, the kind of heaviness you feel when you finally see the truth and you know you can no longer unsee it. I made coffee and sat by the window. The steam rose from the mug like a slow breath. The woods were cold. The air felt sharper than usual. I held the cup with both hands to steady myself. At 9:20, my phone buzzed. Naomi's name flashed again. I answered before the second ring. Her voice cracked. "Mom, can you come over? Please." There was no hesitation. "I'm on my way." When I arrived, Naomi stood at the door with red eyes. Her hair was tied in a rush knot, the kind she made when she was overwhelmed. She stepped aside without a word. I walked into the living room and stopped. Damon stood near the hallway, arms crossed, shoulders stiff. Meredith sat on the couch with a look that said she had been waiting for me. The room smelled faintly of heated arguments and a pot of tea untouched on the table. Naomi took a shaky breath. Damon wants to talk. He didn't wait for her to finish. This is simple, he said. My mother is moving into your cabin, Naomi agrees, and you will accept it. I stared at him, not because I was surprised, but because of the confidence, the absolute certainty in his voice. Naomi whispered, I didn't say I agree. I said I needed time. Damon turned to her. No, you said you understood. She's your mother, but she's not thinking straight. That house is wasted on her. Mom needs it more. Meredith lifted her brows like a queen receiving tribute. I can help keep it running, Ruth. These mountain places are hard on older women. It would be a blessing. Blessing. That word hit the table like a stone. I folded my hands. The cabin is mine. I bought it with my own savings, and I plan to live there. Damon's jaw tightened. Then you're choosing isolation over family. You're choosing to be stubborn when you should be practical. Naomi stepped closer to him. Damon, stop. She's not a burden. Oh, please, he snapped. Everyone knows she doesn't need that house. She's old. People her age move in with family. It's normal. Meredith added, it's safer, too. I held still, but inside something sharp twisted. Damon pointed toward the door like he was explaining instructions. Mom will pack her things. We'll move her in this weekend. End of discussion. Naomi shook her head with wet eyes. No. Damon, you can't tell my mother where to live. You can't. Enough, he barked. It's her duty to help the family. And it's your duty to back me up. Her face broke. My duty is not to control my mother, but he didn't hear her, or didn't want to. He stepped closer to me. You don't need that house. You're old Ruth. Everyone knows it. You can barely keep up with the place. Let someone who actually needs it use it. His words were not shouted. They cut because they were calm. That was when I knew something had shifted. In him, in me, in the room. Naomi covered her face with her hands. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know he would. I touched her shoulder. It's okay. Go upstairs. Rest. She hesitated, then climbed the stairs slowly. Her soft crying drifted down the steps like a small storm. When the bedroom door closed above us, the silence was brittle. Damon looked pleased with himself. Meredith smoothed her sleeve as if everything was settled. I did not argue. I did not fight. I simply reached for my coat. Damon frowned. Where are you going? Home, I said. He scoffed. We're not finished. Yes, I answered softly. We are. I stepped out of the house and closed the door with a quiet click. The cold air met my face like a truth I had delayed for too long. I walked to my car. My hands shook not from fear, but from the surge of clarity. When I sat behind the wheel, I took out my phone and scrolled to a number I had not called in years. Deputy Carla Ortiz. She had worked on several cases with me during my forensic years. Sharp, fair, calm under pressure. The kind of woman who believed in paperwork more than promises. She answered on the second ring. Ruth, she said. Well, this is a surprise. I need some information, I said. Not action. Not yet. I'm listening. The wind pushed against the car, rocking it gently. I need to know my legal rights, I said. If someone tries to force their way into my home, or tries to claim it, or insists I am unfit to live alone. Carla was quiet for a moment. What happened? Just tell me what the law says, she exhaled. Your home is your property. No one can move in without your consent. No one can force you out. If they pressure you or attempt to undermine your ownership, that is harassment. If they forge anything, it becomes criminal. I closed my eyes. And if they try something subtle? Carla's voice dropped to the tone she used when she knew the road ahead needed precision. Then you document everything. You gather proof. You protect the paper trail. And Ruth, only fight this on one front. Which front? Not emotion, she said. Emotion loses. Fight with documents, dates, facts. Let the law speak. Outside the branches swayed. The woods whispered again. Truth, warning, strength. Carla, I said. Thank you. Call me anytime. And Ruth, be careful. I hung up and let the silence settle. My breath steamed the air. The cold hit my bones but steadied my mind. Damon thought he had given an ultimatum. In reality, the only thing drawing a hard line that day was the truth, written in ink and dates. And the reckoning he feared was already in motion. I drove back to the cabin with Carla's words tightening into a... I started with Damon's name. I searched public records, property liens, debt listings, court filings. Wyoming kept things accessible for those who knew where to look, and I did. A list appeared on the screen. Unpaid credit card bills, 2 late payments to a credit union, a donation entry that did not match any registered charity. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Fake charity transactions are not always criminal, but they usually point to someone hiding money or shifting guilt. And Damon hid things the way insecure men hide everything. Loud confidence on the outside, quiet chaos inside. I downloaded every file, every date, every missed payment. Next, I checked his employment records. Naomi once mentioned he worked in sales. Sales jobs often carry commission disputes. That meant possible civil complaints. The screen loaded again. 2 clients had filed minor claims for misrepresentation of service. Nothing large, nothing dramatic. But enough to paint a picture he would never want exposed. I saved them all into a new folder titled Reckoning. Not revenge, not punishment, just the truth organized into neat lines and accurate dates. I printed each document on my small home printer. The pages slid out warm and crisp. I lined them on the kitchen table one after the other. My eyes followed the pattern. Damon had been drowning in debt for longer than Naomi realized. He needed my cabin. That truth settled in my stomach like a stone. The screen dimmed. I pushed my chair back and stepped outside to clear my head. The cold wind carried pine and earth. It was real. It was honest, unlike Damon's plans. I walked toward the property line. Hank's truck turned into my driveway as if the woods had sent him right when I needed a witness to sanity. He rolled down the window. "You look like someone who found termites in the roof." I laughed once. "Worse," I said. "I found Damon's finances." He turned off the engine. "Oh boy, that sounds uglier than termites." "It is." Hank stepped out and leaned on his truck. His coat smelled like smoke from a wood stove. He scratched his beard with the back of his knuckle. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. "I will give you the brief version I said. They told me yesterday that Meredith would move in here. Then I found out Damon is drowning in debt and hiding it from Naomi." Hank let out a low whistle. "So they want your house because he can't pay his bills." "That is my working theory." He kicked a pine cone out of the way. "Well, Ruth, you did mention they want to live in your cabin. I guess that means they will learn something important." "What is that?" I asked. "That the woods do not forgive irresponsible people," he said. "City folks think nature is cute until it hands them consequences." I cracked a smile. "You know, Hank, that might be my new motto." He chuckled. "You need anything. Tools, lumber, backup, you tell me." "I might take you up on that," I said. We said goodbye, and he drove off down the trail. The air settled again. I went back inside and started assembling the surprise. Not a trap, not harm, nothing dramatic. Just the one thing Damon and Meredith feared most: transparency. I took a deep breath and opened my notebook. The forensic lines guided my thoughts. Every entry needed to be clear: the cabin rules, the county requirements, the Forest Service laws on occupancy, the wildlife safety regulations, the penalties for altering property lines. All things every resident must follow. All things Meredith had no idea existed. I gathered the brochures from the local ranger station. I printed a copy of the state trespassing statute. I highlighted the rule about unauthorized occupancy on private land. It was not threatening. It was educational. the kind of education certain people avoid until it burns them. But to build the foundation needed for the truth, Naomi deserved to know what was living under her roof, not what he pretended to be. I placed everything into a neat binder. One tab for forest regulations, one tab for property law, one tab for Damon's debts, one tab for household responsibilities. No emotion, no anger, just facts. I closed the binder. The click of the rings settling in place sounded like punctuation. The woods outside rustled against the cabin wall. Nature approved my method. As I placed the binder on the table, my phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. "Mom, they want to come up this weekend to see the cabin again." My chest tightened, but not with fear, with readiness. I typed back, "Let them come." I stood at the window. The last light filtered through the pines, casting long shadows on the snow. The cabin was quiet, but not vulnerable. It waited. So did I. The reckoning had begun, and it was not loud, not cruel, documented, and inevitable. I knew the exact moment their car left the pavement. The tires hit the gravel road and the sound changed. Less city hum and more stone and dust. The woods noticed first. Birds went quiet. The air tightened. It felt like the land itself was holding its breath. I stood at the sink, rinsing a mug that did not need rinsing. The cabin was spotless. The floors were swept. The countertops were clear. The bed was made with military corners. The only chaos in the room sat on the kitchen table. My surprise. My shield. Every sheet of paper was arranged in deliberate order. Wyoming residency laws, county codes on multi-occupancy, Forest Service regulations for waste disposal, fines highlighted, enforcement contacts underlined. On top of the stack lay Damon's file. Public debts, late fees, a single-page summary I had typed myself. Clear, neutral, devastating. Gravel crunched outside. Car doors opened. I dried my hands and walked to the front door. The cold slipped in first when I opened it. Then Damon. Then Meredith. Damon stepped onto the porch as if he owned the mountain. A nice jacket, polished boots, an expression already annoyed by the dirt road. Meredith followed behind him with pursed lips. She wore city shoes with thin heels that hated rocks. Her eyes moved fast, scanning the logs, the roofline, and the trees. "So this is it," Damon said. "Your little retreat," I smiled. "This is my home." Meredith sniffed the air. "It smells like smoke." "The wood stove does that," I said. "It keeps people from freezing to death. Very old-fashioned." She did not laugh. I stepped aside. "Come in." They crossed the threshold. Most people softened when they saw the cabin. The warm wood, the simple furniture, the window light. Damon softened for 1 second. Then he saw the table. The smile died. "What is all that?" he asked. I closed the door. The latch clicked with a sound I enjoyed. Orientation materials. Meredith squinted. "Orientation for what?" "For anyone who wants to live here," I said. "You told me your mother would be moving in. I thought I should be prepared." They moved closer. The overhead light caught the headings on each stack. Wyoming false residency penalties, multi-occupancy and fire code for rural dwellings, forest waste disposal regulations and fine schedule, predator safety guidelines for private properties. Meredith picked up the first page. Her voice sharpened. "Ruth, what is this supposed to mean?" "That cabin in town may not care how many people you cram into it," I said. "But this land does. The county does. The state does." Damon forced a laugh. "This is dramatic. We are just talking about Mom staying here for a while." I tilted my head. "You told Naomi and me that Meredith would be moving in. That is different from staying for a weekend." His expression tightened. The mask slipped for 1 moment. Then he straightened. "This is still family," he said. "We do not need contracts for family." My heartbeat stayed level. "In my experience, family is exactly who you need contracts with." Meredith flipped the pages. "False residency. Who cares? Everyone bends a few rules in the country. No one checks. They do when the neighbor reports suspicious activity," I said. or when mail starts arriving for people who do not live here, or when someone tries to claim benefits with this address. Her eyes flicked up to mine. Quick, defensive, guilty. I stored that reaction away. Besides, I said the Forest Service loves paperwork. They would send a ranger out here if I asked. Wind pressed against the cabin walls. The sound made Meredith flinch. Damon rolled his shoulders. Ruth, he said, you are blowing this out of proportion. Mom is going through a hard time. She needs support. You have space. Why can you not be compassionate? I am compassionate, I said. That is why I am honest. This is not an apartment above a garage. This is an isolated structure 12 miles from town with predators and weather. Whoever lives here must understand what they are signing up for, legally and literally. He opened his mouth. Then we all heard it. A sharp crack from the tree line. Not close, not far, branch on branch or something heavier. The sound cut through all three of us. Meredith spun to the window. What was that? The woods saying, "Hello," I said. A low rustle followed, then a thud near the porch. Meredith stepped back from the door. Ruth, she whispered, is that a bear? Could be an elk, I said calmly. Could be wind. Could be a neighbor. Damon leaned toward the window. He did not touch the curtain. Fear looks different on men who think they are in control. It tightens the shoulders, narrows the eyes, makes the voice slightly too loud. If there is an animal out there, we should call someone, he said. No need, I said. Hank usually hears trouble before we do. As if the woods agreed, a beam of light swept across the window. Meredith yelped. Damon stepped back so fast he hit a chair. Then came the knock. 3 firm raps. Not frantic, not polite, confident. I opened the door. Hank stood on the porch with a heavy flashlight and a reflective vest. Evening, Ruth, he said. Saw an unfamiliar car and figured I should check. I stepped aside. Come in, Hank. This is Damon and his mother Meredith. Hank nodded. Heard they plan to live up here. His flashlight beam swept the cabin and landed on the paperwork. I did not cover it. I wanted them to see. It is a good place, Hank said, as long as people living here know what they are doing. Meredith attempted a smile. Are you a police officer? No. I fix pipes, clear snow, and sometimes chase bears that tip over trash cans, he said. But the sheriff's wife is my cousin. Around here, everyone is someone's neighbor. Damon swallowed. We are only visiting. My mother might live here. We will be in the city. Hank raised an eyebrow. Out here, live means your name is on the bills, the records, and the county files. They get touchy if people play games with that. Meredith glanced at me. Did Ruth tell you this? I do not need Ruth to tell me, Hank said. I have lived here 30 years. I have seen people who respect the woods and people the woods teach lessons to. The woods always win. Wind slammed against the roof. The trees groaned. Meredith clutched Damon's arm. I think this is being blown out of proportion, Damon said. She only needs a temporary place. Temporary or not, the law is the same, I said. I pulled out a chair and sat. It is time to make things clear. I placed a folder on the table. The cover read, Legal Responsibility Agreement, Ruth Adler Cabin. My handwriting was straight and calm. What is this? Damon asked. This, I said, is the legal responsibility contract for anyone living here with me or in my place. It outlines who is accountable for waste disposal, fire safety, forest regulations, and any consequences of their actions. Meredith scoffed. You make it sound like the Bears will hire lawyers. I looked directly at her. I do not want anyone sued by wildlife, I said, and I do not want legal trouble because someone else lives carelessly. Hank let out a low laugh. She is right. Out here, one careless act costs money, property, or life. This is not a playground. I pushed the folder toward them. If your mother truly plans to move here, I said these are the conditions. Anyone living here must sign. No exceptions, no verbal favors, not anymore. Damon stared at the pages. His cheeks reddened. Meredith skimmed the fine lines about fines, waste penalties, and reporting fraudulent residency. Each line tightened the air. What if we refused to sign? Damon asked. I leaned back. No raised voice, no fear. "Then no one moves here," I said. This forest has no room for people who want benefits without responsibility. The wind swept the cabin again. Hank stood still. The room was so quiet I heard my own heartbeat. Not from fear, from clarity. The game had changed sides. They thought they could pull me back to the city, corner me, pressure me. But now they stood in my territory, on my land, under my rules. And this was only the first round of the reckoning. The cabin stayed silent after Hank left, the kind of silence that exposes every breath, every shifting emotion. Damon stood near the table, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the contract he pretended not to understand. Meredith hovered behind him, clutching her purse like it held the answers she wanted. Then headlights flashed across the windows. Naomi's car. My chest tightened. I had not expected her so soon, but I knew why she came. Damon must have called her the moment Hank stepped outside. I opened the door before she could knock. Naomi stood there, cheeks flushed from cold and worry. Her eyes moved from me to Damon, then to the papers. "Mom," she said softly, "what is happening?" Damon rushed toward her. "Naomi, thank God. You need to talk some sense into her. Mom cannot stay in the city alone. And Ruth is being unreasonable." He placed a hand on her arm. "Too tight, too controlling." Naomi pulled her arm back. "Why are you yelling?" "I am not yelling," he snapped. Then louder. "But I would not have to raise my voice if people cooperated." Meredith stepped next to him. "Your mother is making a scene, dear. She refuses to help family." I watched Naomi swallow hard. She always absorbed tension before reacting. It was her gentleness, her flaw, her strength. Damon pressed again. "You need to support Mom living here. It is your duty as her daughter-in-law." Naomi lowered her eyes. "What duty?" "The duty to help family," he said. "The duty to give security to the elderly. My mother deserves stability." He said the word stability as if I were chaos, as if my home were a burden. I stepped forward. "Naomi," I said, "come sit with me for a moment." Damon blocked her path. "No, she needs to hear the truth first." His voice rose. "Do you know what your mother said, Naomi? She said this cabin is hers alone. She said she will not lift a finger to support my mother. She's being selfish." I felt the words land on Naomi like blows. But then she whispered, "Damon, why did Mom's address show up on my credit report?" He froze. It was not an accusation. It was confusion, fear, a question that had been waiting for proof. I walked to the table, picked up a folder, held it out to her. "Naomi," I said gently, "I need you to read something." She took the folder with trembling hands. Damon lunged forward as if to stop her, but Meredith grabbed his arm. Inside the folder sat the documentation I had found earlier. Fraudulent credit activity, a new credit card issued under Naomi's name. A balance she never approved. Charges from 2 counties away, all under Damon's signature. Naomi stared at the papers, her face drained of color. "Damon," she said, barely audible, "what is this?" He forced a laugh, brittle and sharp. "That is nothing. Your mother is twisting things. She has always had a problem with me." She kept reading, her voice cracked. "This card was issued last year, under my name. Damon, did you open this?" He ran a hand through his hair. "It was temporary. I needed to move money around. You were busy. I meant to tell you." The words sliced through the air. I stepped beside her. "Naomi," I said gently, "you are not crazy. You are not imagining things. You just lacked information." Her body shook. Tears pressed behind her eyes but did not fall. Why, she whispered, "Why would you do this?" Damon's face hardened. "Because you would not understand. Because you never help financially. Because your mother refuses to help. I carry everything alone." Naomi whispered, "You used my name. And why not Meredith cut in? You are his wife. What he does is for the family." Naomi recoiled as if struck. I put an arm around her shoulder. She leaned into me. Not for support, for truth. "It is fraud, Naomi," I said softly. "And you are not responsible for his mistakes," Damon snapped. "Mom, stop. Stop filling her head with poison." I met his eyes, calm as stone. "I am giving her facts." He stepped toward us, too close, too angry. Then a sharp knock hit the door. 3 firm hits. Official, confident. I opened it. Deputy Carla stood there in her uniform coat, one hand on her belt, the other holding a clipboard. Her breath formed white clouds in the cold air. "Evening, Ms. Adler," she said. "We received a call about a disturbance at your property." I looked past her. The sheriff's vehicle lights flashed quietly. Of course. Meredith had panicked and called the police. Before I answered, Meredith rushed forward. Finally. "Officer, thank goodness, we are being threatened." Carla did not even blink. "By whom?" "By her," Meredith said, pointing at me. "She is harassing us. She's trying to throw us out illegally. She's manipulating my son," and Carla raised a hand. "Ma'am, slow down. Let me ask the legal homeowner a question first." She turned to me. "Ms. Adler, did you invite these individuals here?" "Yes," I said, "so they could review the legal requirements for residency." "And is anyone being threatened?" she asked. "No," I said calmly. "Only the law is being enforced." Carla nodded once, then turned slowly to Damon and Meredith. Her tone shifted. Firmer, colder. For the record, Carla said false residency claims are a Class C offense in this county. Attempting to move into a rural dwelling without proper authorization violates Forest Service Code, and using someone else's address without consent is reportable. Meredith's jaw dropped. Damon's shoulders stiffened. Carla continued. "The call made to dispatch described an emergency, a threat. That is not consistent with what I am seeing here. A false emergency call is a chargeable offense." Color drained from Meredith's face. Naomi whispered, "Oh my God," Damon stuttered. "We did not mean—" "We just thought Carla cut him off. You thought the law would bend for you. It does not." The cabin held its breath. Then she looked at me. "Ms. Adler, do you want these individuals removed from your property tonight?" Damon snapped. "You cannot do that. This is family." Carla turned back to him. "Family does not override property rights." I exhaled slowly, each word clear as glass. "No," I said. "I want them to leave on their own." Carla nodded. "Understood. But if they return without consent, call us." Then she gave Damon one final look, the kind that carried both warning and truth. "Whatever plan you had," she said, "it ends tonight." She stepped out into the cold. Her boots cracked the frost. Her car door shut. The forest took the silence back. Inside, Naomi began to cry. I wrapped my arms around her. Not as a warrior, not as a strategist, as a mother. "You're not alone," I said, "and you have never been weak." Behind us, Damon's plan finally collapsed under the weight of its own lies. I did not sleep much that night, but I did not pace either. I made tea, washed the same mug twice, and then sat at the table. When your life has been built on documentation, you learn that the real work happens in quiet hours. By morning, the phone call came. "Ms. Adler," the voice said, "this is Deputy Carla Torres. I need to inform you that we have opened a file regarding possible false residency claims associated with your address." Her tone was professional, not dramatic. "I figured that might happen," I said. "What do you need from me?" "Just the truth," she replied. "We have cross-checked state benefit applications. Your address appears on forms for Meredith." "We have evidence she does not live there." I looked at the pine trees outside my window. "She has never lived here," I said. "Not for one night." "Would you be willing to state that in person?" Carla asked. "We are asking all parties to come in, Damon and Naomi included." "I will be there," I said. When I hung up, my hands were steady. This was not a fight in a kitchen. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and paper. Phones rang, printers hummed, boots moved across tile. A young deputy at the front desk nodded. "Ms. Adler," he said, "Deputy Torres is expecting you. Interview room 2. Naomi exhaled. Interview room. That sounds serious. It is serious, I said, but it is also simple. We tell the truth. Carla met us in the hallway. No sunglasses here, just clear eyes badge and a folder in her hand. "Thank you for coming in," she said. "Damon and Meredith are already here. We are talking to everyone separately." She led us into a small room. Table, 4 chairs, a camera in the corner. No drama, just procedure. "I need to ask some routine questions," Carla said. "For the record, this interview is recorded. Do you consent?" "Yes," I said. Naomi nodded. Carla pressed a button on the recorder. "State your name and address, please." "Ruth Adler," I said. I read the cabin address, every word clear. "And you are the sole legal owner of that property?" she asked. "Yes. Cabin and land, purchased outright. No co-owners, no tenants." Carla glanced at her notes. "Do Meredith or Damon Harrison live at your address?" "No," I said. "They have never lived at my address. They visited once to pressure me. That is all." "Did you ever give permission for Meredith to use your address for state benefit applications?" she asked. "Never," I said. "If I had known she was doing that, I would have stopped it immediately." Carla nodded slowly. "That matches what we found on the cameras." She turned to Naomi. "Mrs. Harrison," she said, "do you live at Ms. Adler's cabin?" Naomi shook her head. "No, I live in Denver. I have never lived at the cabin, only visited." "Were you aware your mother-in-law was using your mother's address on state forms?" Carla asked. Naomi swallowed. "No, I only found out last night. My husband did not tell me." Her hands twisted together on the table. Then she straightened them out, one finger at a time, as if she were organizing courage. Carla looked between us. "Thank you," she said. "Your statements are consistent with the evidence we have. I may need you to sign written versions later." We stepped into the hallway. Voices carried faintly from another room. Damon's voice. Meredith's. Lower at first, then louder. "I did not lie," Damon was saying. "My mother intended to live there. Intent counts." A deeper voice answered. "The sheriff, I guessed. Intent does not equal residency. The law requires more than vague plans. I am telling you, Damon pushed. Ruth is doing this to punish us. She forced my mother out. She's manipulating the system." Naomi flinched beside me. Carla lowered her voice. "You can wait in the lobby if you prefer." "No," Naomi said quietly. "I need to hear this." We stood near a doorway, not close enough to see inside, but near enough to hear when Damon's tone shifted. The sheriff spoke again. "Mr. Harrison, you submitted paperwork stating your mother lives at that cabin. You signed under penalty of perjury. She was supposed to move in. Damon insisted. Ruth promised. Then she changed her mind. I could almost see the sheriff's face. Probably calm, probably tired of similar stories. "We have video evidence," he said. "Your mother has never stayed overnight. Utilities show a single occupant. Registration history confirms this." Damon's chair scraped. A sudden impact on the table followed. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You are taking the side of some old woman in the woods over actual family." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. It was not the anger that shocked her. It was the contempt in his word choice. "Some old woman," the sheriff's voice cooled. "Mr. Harrison, you are raising your voice in a law enforcement office. I suggest you lower it." "You are all the same," Damon snapped. "Small-town cops. You see an outsider and decide he is the villain. You do not understand real pressure, real life, real responsibility." Carla moved closer to the door, ready if needed. The sheriff did not match Damon's volume. "What I understand is paperwork. You filed a form claiming your mother lives at a place she does not live. You signed that under oath. It is just paperwork," Damon barked. "Everybody bends things." Silence followed. Heavy, final. The sheriff spoke again. I could hear his pen on paper. For the record, he said subject is displaying hostile behavior and dismissive attitude toward legal obligations. Note, everybody bends things, quote, entered into file. The words hit the air like nails sealing a crate. Damon's voice wavered. What does that mean? It means the sheriff replied, your attitude is now part of your record. If the state opens a fraud investigation, they will see you were warned and chose to minimize the issue. Naomi exhaled sharply like someone had just pulled a curtain from a window. She was not seeing her husband under soft kitchen lights anymore. She was seeing him under fluorescent bulbs, framed by legal codes and recorded statements. Can we go? She whispered to me. I cannot listen anymore. We can wait outside, I said. We stepped into the lobby. Wooden benches, old magazines, a bulletin board full of missing pet notices and community events. Naomi sat with her elbows on her knees, staring at the floor. I always told myself he was just stressed, she said, that he raised his voice because of pressure, that he hid things to protect us. I sat beside her. Stress does not turn honest people into liars, I said quietly. It only peels back the layer that was hiding who they already were. Tears slipped down her face, but she did not sob this time. They were slow, controlled. I heard him, she said, the way he talked about you. Some old woman in the woods. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. He's not just disrespectful, she said. He is dangerous. To you, to me, to anyone who threatens his story. I did not argue. I did not push. I am glad you heard it from his mouth, I said, not just from my interpretation. The door opened. Damon came out with Meredith behind him. His face was flushed, his jaw clenched. He saw us, and for a moment something almost like shame flickered there. Then it hardened into blame. This is your fault, he said to me. You and your obsession with rules. Naomi stood up slowly. No, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the lobby like glass. This is your fault. You lied on forms. You used my mother's address. You opened credit in my name. You yelled at law enforcement for doing their job. He stared at her as if he did not recognize her. Naomi, not here, Meredith hissed. Yes, here, Naomi said, because this is where truth goes. Into files, into records, into places you cannot rewrite. Carla stepped into the doorway, arms folded. Mr. Harrison, she said, you are free to go for now. But be aware, the State Benefit Office has been notified. There may be further contact. He scoffed. We will see about that. He pushed past us toward the exit. Meredith trailed after him, muttering about ungrateful people and unfair systems. When the door closed behind them, Naomi sat back down. What happens now? Carla gave a small, tired smile. That is what the camera is for, she said, nodding toward the ceiling. It hears everything. On the drive back to the cabin, the mountains stretched wide and quiet around us. Naomi stared out the window, watching the land roll by. Finally, she spoke. I think she said that today was the first time I really saw him. I kept my eyes on the road. Then, as painful as it is, I said today was necessary. The steering wheel felt solid under my hands, the same way the table had felt solid when I signed the deed to my cabin. Facts, wood, land, all more reliable than people who think rules are optional. Behind us at the sheriff's office, Damon's words sat inside a file now. Everybody bends things. Some old woman in the woods. You do not understand real pressure. In front of us, the road home. And the slow, careful work of helping my daughter build a life that did not depend on a man whose first instinct under pressure was to lie and shout. The woods do not lie. Neither does a recorded statement. I drove Naomi back to her house in silence. The road curved through the hills like a long breath held too long. Naomi stared out the window, her fingers tight around her phone. She was not crying, not shaking, just thinking in a way that made her seem older than she was. When we pulled into her driveway, the porch light was still on. Damon must have left in a hurry. His truck was gone. His mother's SUV, too. The house sat quiet but not peaceful. Quiet like something had cracked inside it. Naomi unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. "I cannot stay here tonight," she said. Her voice was soft, not weak. Soft the way a bruise feels under a fingertip. "I know," I said, "but we will go inside together." We walked in. The first thing I noticed was the smell. A home always tells you the truth before its people do. Tonight it smelled like cold air and tension. Naomi stood in the entryway for a long moment. "I built this life with him," she said, "and now it feels like it never existed." "You built it," I said softly. "He misused it. There is a difference." She nodded without looking at me. We went room to room, gathering her essentials: clothes, documents, medication. The quilt I made her when she left for college. She folded it carefully and held it against her chest. "You do not have to rush," I said. "Take what matters." She opened a drawer in the living room cabinet. Inside were envelopes, bank statements, insurance letters, a credit report printed months ago. She stopped. "This is where he hid the paperwork," she whispered. I stood back. I did not touch anything. I wanted her to see it herself, to choose what she needed to understand. She picked up one of the envelopes. Damon's handwriting was sloppy on the front. Inside was a credit statement tied to her Social Security number. Late fees lined the bottom. Her breath caught. "He said this was a clerical issue," she said. "He said he fixed it." "He hid it," I said. "He used your trust." Naomi closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was no denial left, no bargaining, only clarity. "I cannot live with him anymore," she said. "When you are ready, Toinai, we will leave." But she was already moving. She took 2 suitcases from the basement stairs. I helped her pack, but I let her lead. This was her life, her decision, her line to draw. While she folded clothes, she spoke in fragments. "He used to be kind. He changed when the debt grew. I thought marriage meant patience. I thought love could fix everything." I did not interrupt. Sometimes a mother's job is to sit in the quiet and let her child hear her own truth. When the suitcases were full, she zipped them shut with a steady hand. "I want to go now," she said. We loaded everything into my car. The cold air bit at our cheeks. The sky held no stars, just a flat gray that seemed ready to snow. Naomi stood by the passenger door and looked at her house one last time. "I kept giving him chances," she said, "and he kept taking them as permission. That is what people like him do," I said, "until you draw a line." She inhaled sharply. Then she got into the car. We drove back to the cabin. The woods felt heavier tonight, protective, watchful. Naomi stared straight ahead, shoulders set in a way I had not seen before. Inside the cabin, I made tea, not for tradition, for grounding. She wrapped her hands around the mug and let the warmth settle into her fingers. "Mom," she said quietly, "do you think I failed?" "No," I said. "You learned." Her lips trembled. "It hurts." "Hurt is information," I said. "It tells you where not to go again." She nodded, but her eyes filled. She wiped them with the sleeve of her sweater. "I do not want to turn into someone bitter," she said. "You will not," I said. "You are choosing honesty. That is not bitterness. That is survival." She set the mug down. The tea barely touched. Then she opened her bag and pulled out a document. The paper was crisp, fresh, newly printed. "Carla sent this to me after we spoke," she said. "It is a petition for legal separation." I met her eyes, calm, not pushing, not guiding, just present. "You do not have to sign now," I said. "Sleep on it." "No," she said. Her voice steadied in the center. "Tonight is exactly when I need to sign it. If I wait, he will talk me into one more year of excuses." She placed the document on the table. She read the first page slowly, lips moving silently with each line. She reached the signature block and paused. Once I sign this, she said, everything changes. Everything is already changing, I said. Signing just makes it honest. She took a breath. Her signature was not shaky. It was clean, measured, final, a line drawn. She placed the pen down. Her body sagged back in the chair like the air had left her lungs. Then she surprised me. She leaned over and rested her forehead on my shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not saying, 'I told you so,' for not pushing me, for letting me see it myself." I wrapped an arm around her. "I raised you to think, not obey." She laughed through a breath that sounded half-broken. "You did." We sat like that for a long time, not mother and child. Two women stitching themselves back together after a truth snapped something open. At midnight, I set up the spare room for her. Fresh sheets, extra blankets. She stood in the doorway and looked at the space. "Safe," she said. "Yours," I said. She climbed into bed. I turned off the light. Before I closed the door, she said one more thing. "Mom," she whispered, "I think this was the first step, and I am scared." "Being scared means you are alive," I said, "and moving." She nodded into the dark. I walked back to the kitchen, picked up the signed separation papers, and placed them in a folder. Across the table, her signature shone wet under the lamp. Two women sat in a 600-square-foot cabin, and somehow the room now held more future than the house she had just left behind. The woods outside shifted in the wind as if they understood that a woman had drawn a line and finally stepped over it. 3 months passed. Winter loosened its grip on the hills and the first signs of spring crept across the woods. The thaw came slowly the way healing does when a person has been carrying too much for too long. My cabin felt different now, warmer, brighter, settled. Peace was no longer something I chased. It was something I lived. I woke early every morning. The light filtered through the pines with a soft gold that never looked the same twice. I brewed coffee, the same strong blend I had used my entire career. The familiar smell filled the cabin and steadied me. I opened the windows to let in the cool air and listened to the distant creek. The world moved at a pace that finally matched my heartbeat. The cottage had become a home in the truest sense. The repairs I made in those first weeks had held. The doors no longer stuck. The water ran clear. The roof no longer groaned with each gust of wind. I painted one wall in the living room a deep, calm green. It reminded me of the moss along the trail behind the cabin. Every change I made felt earned, not forced. Naomi had moved into a small rental 15 minutes away, a little duplex with a blue door and a fenced yard, close enough for comfort, far enough for independence. She visited often sometimes to talk sometimes just to sit in the quiet with me. She held herself differently now, shoulders back, eyes clearer, voice steady. She had taken a job at the library and started volunteering at the animal shelter. Her life no longer orbited around Damon's moods or debts. One afternoon, she brought me a bag of groceries. Fresh apples, bread from the bakery, a jar of honey. She placed everything on the counter with a soft smile. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel lighter," I said. She leaned against the counter. "Do you ever think about him now?" "Only enough to remember why I left the city," I said. She nodded. "I do not miss him. I miss the version of me who believed in good things. You are building her again," I said, piece by piece. He stepped out with a wrench in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "Brought you something," he said. "Maple donuts from the gas station. Best thing within 20 miles. I laughed. "What brings you here, Hank?" He tapped the porch railing. "You said the water pressure felt low. Thought I'd take a look." He crouched beside the outdoor valve and inspected it the way a doctor studies an X-ray. Years of snow and cold had taught him the shape of every pipe in this valley. While he worked, he talked the way he always did. Casual, honest, a little too direct for people who were not used to country life. "So," he said, "reckoning done yet?" I wiped my hands on a towel. "Reckoning is never about revenge." He looked up. "No. It is about putting things back where they belong," I said. and letting what does not belong fall away. Hank nodded like that made perfect sense. Looks like you did exactly that. I did what I needed, I said, nothing more. He tightened the last bolt and stood. Pressure should be steady now. Let me know if it dips again. I will, I said. Thank you. He handed me the bag of donuts. Eat one before it gets cold. It is not poetry, but it is something. When he left the woods, settled back into their usual quiet. I carried the donuts inside and placed the bag on the table. The cabin felt full in a way it never had when Damon and Meredith tried to force their way into it. Full with peace, full with breathing room, full with the simple dignity of a life reclaimed. That evening, I sat by the window with a small blanket over my lap. The sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the sky a deep crimson. Birds traced loose patterns across the horizon. A fox crossed the clearing with careful steps. This land told stories without words, and I listened the way one listens to an old friend. My mind drifted to the past months. Everything that had cracked, everything that had healed. I did not feel triumph. I did not need it. What I felt was steadiness, the kind that comes from choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. I checked my phone. A message from Naomi glowed on the screen. Mom, I signed the final papers today. Thank you for helping me see myself again. I read the message twice. Then I set the phone down and breathed in the fading light. Later, as night settled, I stepped outside. The stars came out slowly, one by one, like shy witnesses. The air tasted sharp, clean, true. I walked to the edge of the clearing and looked toward the trail, my boots pressed into the soft earth. The wind moved through the pines with a long whisper. This chapter of my life had not been gentle, but it had been honest. And honesty, I had learned, was worth more than ease. I returned to the porch and leaned against the railing. The cabin lights glowed behind me. My home, my boundaries, my peace. Reckoning was restoration. Reckoning was returning to yourself. I had done that. I had earned that. And for the first time in years, I felt the truth of it settle deep in my bones. I was exactly where I needed to be. The woods taught me something I had forgotten. The woods taught me something I had forgotten. Peace is not a gift people hand you when they are done using you. It is the space you clear and defend for yourself. My son-in-law tried to write me into the margins of my own life, to turn my home into his exit plan and my silence into his permission. He failed. The paperwork did not. Tonight my cabin is quiet in the right way, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat without flinching. If you have ever been told you are too old to draw a line, I hope you hear this clearly. There is nothing louder than a woman who chooses her own peace, and I am no longer carrying the weight that never belonged to me. If this story spoke to you, I would love to know where you are listening from. Your comments help this channel reach more people who carry stories like ours. Thank you for spending this time with me. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that quiet strength is real strength. Your voice matters here, always.